So I hope you've got, you're ready with your pen and paper to note down stuff, because I'm going to be covering a lot of things in a very short period of time. And some of the stuff I'm talking to you about when I'm working with clients, we do it over a day or 2 days. And I'm going to compress all of this into approximately 1 hour. So please be sure to, to take notes so you don't miss anything. And like Gaurav said, I'm going to start with vision. So just a quick, what does vision mean to you? Can any of you just tell me, what does vision mean to you? What do you understand by vision? So what I'm going to do again, even I have a plan B, because we've lost some time, and I do want to share everything that I wanted to share with you completely. I don't want to cut that short. So what I am going to do is I want to give more time for Q&As at the end, so that things are absolutely clear. You can clarify anything that you want to. I want to be sure that I give you all the concepts and frameworks and tools that I want to give you. So I'm going to reduce the interactivity a little bit. I hope that's okay with all of you, because we don't have as much time as I'd planned earlier. So interaction does take a little bit of time. So I'm just going to go through this right now. Please note down your questions, and in the Q&A session, I'll be happy to discuss whatever you want to. We'll spend some time there. So this is one thing, before I start, this is one place where I do want to get some feedback. I'd asked you a question before the break on what your definition or your understanding of vision is. So I'd just like to hear from a few of you. How do you see vision? What does it mean for you? And there's no right or wrong answer over here. I will give you a perspective from my side, but I just want to understand where you guys are right now. So anyone,
anyone, what vision?
We can respond from you.
Hello.
Christopher, you can hear me, right?
I can hear you.
You can come here and maybe.
Christopher, hi, this is Siddharth. I'm coming closer to the laptop. So for me, I represent a hyperlocal e-commerce company in Northeast, and we typically be in a growth stage. Having said that, for me, vision is going to be what a dream of a problem that I thought of solving, right? And against that problem, I been able to go and set my my priorities right, in what I want to achieve in all the priorities that I've set. I think for me, that's going to be the vision.
Great, thank you very much. Anybody else wants to? Maybe I can take one or two.
Vision for us. I'm Sachin from Argus travel company in Sikkim. So vision for us would be to the goal or thing that you want to achieve in coming years, or where do you want to see when people see you, what do you want them to perceive about you? That is the vision.
Right. Thank you. One more
Hello,
person.
Sir.
Yeah.
Hello, sir. I represent an agriculture-based startup working with the farmers of Northeast. And for us, the vision is a kind of what we are thinking a revolution, something what we call a white revolution in Gujarat by a single man, Dr. Korean. Similar kind of vision we are having to promote the Northeast across the world by our interventions in the agriculture sector to promote the economy, to benefit the local people, and to make the name world famous name of this region. So that is our vision, what we think, sir.
Great, thank you very much. So I'm going to move on from here in the interest of time, but thank you for sharing what your perspective of vision is. So like I said, there's no right or wrong answer, and each one of you has a good perspective on vision. You've got a dream, you've got an ambition, there's something that you want to achieve through your business, and that's great. And that's typically what any business owner, any entrepreneur has. They have this dream, they start a business with something in mind in terms of what they want to achieve. Now the problem that comes between vision and reality, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. How do you fix that gap? The gap between vision and reality is that you have to convert your vision into reality, but you are not going to be doing it. Initially, as a startup, yes, you will start, you may be by yourself, or you may have 3 or 4 people with you. But at the end of the day, as an entrepreneur, as a single person, there's only so much you can do. It's not humanly possible to implement your vision all by yourself, which means you have to get other people to share in your vision. The people who join your company, the people who join your business have to share in that vision. Now, if you think about what you've told me about your vision, you are very clear in your mind. I mean, each of you who've given the understanding of the vision, all 3 of you, you're very, very clear in your mind about what your vision is, what it means to you, right? I can hear from the way you described your vision that you're very passionate about this, your vision. You're very passionate about wanting to achieve it, and that's great. The problem, and this is the gap between vision and reality, the problem is the people who are going to come and work for you, who are going to be employed in your company. Remember, they're not going to be business owners, even if you give them stock options. They are not the entrepreneur. You are the entrepreneur. And they do not have that vision. It's a fact, it's a reality. They do not have that vision. When they come on board, you have to get them to understand that vision so that they can implement it for you. And this is, when we hear this thing about 95% of businesses failing, this is one of the critical reasons, because the entrepreneur is unable to transfer his or her vision to the people who will actually implement that vision. This is a reality of life. So it may not sound a very happy statement to make, but like all problems, there's a solution to this, and I'm going to give you that solution. So what I like to do is look at vision in a slightly different way. And I'm going to offer this up to you as an idea, which you can take and adapt and implement in your business. Because for me, it is extremely critical that the vision that the entrepreneur has must be so clear that it should be clear to everyone in the business, every single employee, down to the last person, which means, and I given, I mean, I'm if there is a person in your organization who is at the lowest level of the corporate hierarchy, he could be someone in the office who's who's manning the pantry, for example, and making coffee for everyone. Even that person should understand the vision. That's the kind of clarity that you need to achieve. And if you achieve that clarity, I can almost guarantee you that your vision will be implemented. Because how do you expect people to implement your vision if they won't understand what your vision is? And the reason why I take that last person who may not even be very highly educated, if that person can understand your vision, if you can translate it into a language which even that person can understand, then everybody else in the organization will understand it. And that's where this perspective of vision. So this is a proprietary tool which we use, and I'm sharing this with you. We use this with every single one of our business clients when we start working with it. And this is the first thing that we do. And vision, according to this concept, is divided into 2 parts. The first part is a purpose, the stated purpose, and the second is what I call business growth metrics. And I'll explain each of these to you. So I'm going to explain it by going into practicalities. Let me start with, and I'm going to give you examples. So my own firm, we have a stated purpose. So I'm going to start by talking about purpose. It's very important. And why do I talk about purpose? And why is purpose the first part or an integral part of vision? Because this is something that very few business owners think about, very honestly. Very few entrepreneurs actually think about this. And I say this because in a lot of places I go and ask people, and I ask them this simple question: why is your business in existence? Why? Why is your business around? Why is it there? And you'll be surprised at how many entrepreneurs are unable to give me an answer to this question because they haven't thought about it. It's not that they don't know. When we start thinking about it, they know exactly why the business should be around, but they have never ever thought about it. And if you don't do this, it's like building a house without a foundation. The purpose of existence is so critical. It's really, really important. It's like it's like human beings. We look around spiritually and we say, what is the purpose of our life? Why are we here? It's something as core as that. And giving the example of my own firm, this is our stated purpose: to help business owners achieve freedom. And you can see that it's a very simple statement, very easy to understand. Anybody can understand this. It's to help business owners achieve freedom. And you can see this is a vision. This is something that is big. It has an impact, and it's something that people can actually go out and execute. So everything we do in the business, in our business, is geared around helping entrepreneurs or business owners to achieve freedom. And the freedom, the reason why we haven't defined it, because different people define freedom in different ways. Some people talk about freedom as freedom of time. I want the time to do what I want. My business should run on its own. Some people talk about financial freedom, and financial freedom itself can be different. Some people say, I want to be very rich. Other people say, I want to retire in 10 years' time. It's the definition is different. So whatever be the kind of freedom that an entrepreneur wants, we help them to achieve that. And that's the purpose. So how do you arrive at the stated purpose for your business? I'm actually going to compress about 4 hours of work into 5 minutes. So please bear with me, but I'm going to give you the step-by-step approach that we use with clients to arrive at their stated purpose. And I will urge you to note down these three steps. And whenever you get the time, set aside 1 or 2 hours of your time and work through these questions, which will help you to arrive at your stated purpose. It takes time to actually think about this and condense it. So the first question you ask, the core question is, why does your business exist? But start by saying, what purpose will it serve? What is the impact your business is going to have on the world? What will happen if your business is not around tomorrow? Will people miss it? People should, right? People should miss it. Look at Facebook, for example. Whether you're a fan of Facebook or you're not, you don't like Facebook, it doesn't matter. If Facebook is not around tomorrow, it's going to be missed. People are going to say, oh gosh, I wish we had Facebook, or I wish we had Instagram. So there is a purpose, there is an impact that your business has to make on the world. If it's not making an impact, you need to figure out what that impact should be. Because let's face it, successful businesses are those which make an impact on the world in any form. And just think about it. Think about all the successful businesses, and you will see that they make an impact. Think of all the businesses that have failed, have closed down, and you will discover that those are the ones that have not made an impact. They have no purpose. They're just there. And you don't want to be like the entrepreneur. One of my clients who, when we started working, and I asked him, why are you in this business? Why is the business around? And he said, well, 25 years ago, he was in the business of oxides, oxides to supply to battery manufacturers. And I asked him, why are you in this business? It's a commodity business. And one of his biggest problems was price, because commodities price plays a big role, right? And he said, well, 25 years ago, I didn't know what business to start. And this looked like a good business to start. So I started it. And now I've got experience in this business. I've got expertise in this business, but it's a very, very competitive business because it's based on price. And you don't want to be an entrepreneur by accident. You have a vision for your business. Now try and figure out, what is the purpose of the business? What is the impact it'll have? And then the second question, once you've done that, and please remember now, you can see we're not talking about customers. We're not talking about markets. We're not talking about products or services. That's not what we're talking about over here. We're talking about purpose and impact. And then the second step is to look at needs. If this is my purpose, what needs will it satisfy? So in the case of my firm, if our purpose is to, the answer I would have given to this for the first question is, we want entrepreneurs to feel free to do what they want to do without worrying about their business. That's really the purpose, right? That's the impact. And it's a big impact, right? Because if we are not there tomorrow, all our 200 clients would have not grown by 100 to 300%. So that's a good purpose. And the needs that it will satisfy are more like, execution challenges, growth challenges, finding the right kind of people, building the right kind of brand. These are all needs. And then the third question, this is finally when you come to your customers. Who will your business serve? In order to fulfill that purpose, in order to satisfy those needs, who are your customers going to be? And this is very important because this is when you start looking at what your markets are going to be and what the mistake that we all make as entrepreneurs, and I've made this mistake when I started off, is we start by identifying our customers or our product. Isn't that right? That's where we start. We say, this is our product or service. This is what we're going to offer, and this is who we're going to sell it to. The problem with that is that very often it turns out to be the wrong thing. And again, I'm not going to give you examples right now because of time constraints. But if you just go and search for businesses and look at their histories, you will find that more than 95% of startups start with one idea but are successful with a totally different idea. And look at Netflix, for example. Netflix was a DVD rental agency, right? And it moved into streaming. It's the purpose of the business is what defines what you'll be doing, what products you'll be offering, what services you'll be offering. Because you can see in these three questions, we're not talking about what you are doing, what are you offering. We're talking about the purpose, the needs, and your customers. After that, you have to figure out what products or services will satisfy your customers' needs and fulfill your purpose. And you can see when you do it this way, it's a slightly longer way of doing things, but you're going to find the right products and the right services for the right customers. And you will be fulfilling their needs, which is why there will be a demand for your products and services. So this is a very, very solid foundation to start from. Right. And once you have answered these three questions, so answering these three questions will take you about maybe 1 to 1.5 hours. And then the next 30 minutes you will spend in trying to compress these three answers into a statement that is less than 10 words. Do not go more than 10 words because you will not achieve clarity. And it's difficult. It's not easy to compress it into 10 words, but you will find that when you do it, there will be so much clarity. Now, let me give you some real client examples to show you what I mean. And you can see all of these are within 10 words. We use technology to solve problems and help businesses and people grow. This was a company which was reselling IT equipment. Firewall, security solutions, HP, Dell, hardware, right? And when we sat and examined their purpose, they never thought about it. They suddenly got a different perspective, and that's when their growth started, because suddenly new customers, new markets started opening up because we were focusing on purpose, needs, and then identifying customers. This was a typical example where they said, oh, we can resell hardware and we can provide solutions to install and commission it. But why? Why are you doing it? Because there are a whole bunch of other people doing it, right? The moment we got this definition, this role, this purpose, it became different. This was a textile customer, a one-stop brand destination for all ethnic wear needs. That's the purpose. Connecting people to facilitate growth and knowledge sharing using technology. You can see these are all within 10 words. And we arrived at all these statements, the purpose statements, using the same three-step process that I've just outlined to you. Trusted, innovative power solutions with efficiency and optimization. Now, this is this is a small 18 or 20 crore manufacturing client, which is making, they were manufacturing custom built transformers, which cost 1 crore and upwards. And they weren't going anywhere. Cash flow was a huge problem, right? Funding, investment for this kind of a product it's very, very capital intensive. And then the moment we opened up this, and I'll show you some examples later on also on the opportunities that we opened up for them, you can see that the whole business has changed. And this is where the growth came from. Helping people live long, healthy lives through affordable hygiene solutions. And this is short and sweet. Make people happy and stay healthy. And this is interestingly an FMCG snacks brand that came up with this. Make people happy and stay healthy. So this is the first part of vision, the stated purpose. Once you've done this, you're not complete with your vision yet, because what is a vision if it is not translatable into concrete, measurable terms for your team? And that's where metrics come in. Now, the traditional, if I remember my textbooks from, my MBA, we were taught that vision is something you can't measure. It's something vague and ambiguous. I have a different view on this, because I think that employees, team members, people who are working for you, who are employed by your business, and are not entrepreneurs, they need something that's concrete and tangible. You as an entrepreneur may not need it, but they need it. They need, because they can understand. I mean, just imagine a person who's say looking at accounts receivables in the company. I'm just taking an example. Is looking at just one part of the business, right? You tell them my stated purposes is, taking the last example, helping people. What's it? Making people happy and stay healthy, right? So you say, make people happy and stay healthy. This is our stated purpose. Okay, great. What does it mean to me as an accounts receivables executive? Someone who's calling customers for collections, right? That's what I'm doing. What does it mean? And that's why you need business growth metrics, because you have to translate your vision into reality. You have to translate your vision into something that will be an engine of growth for your business. And you start by defining the time frame for your business growth metrics. And I typically advocate, depending on your industry, depending on what business you're in, you could take either a 3-year time frame or a 5-year time frame. I wouldn't look at anything else, either 3 years or 5 years, because these are I mean, let's just say these are the optimal timeframes that we have established through experience at work. If you take anything less than 3 years, it's too short. You can't build in less than 3 years, and then the whole planning goes for a toss. If you take more than 5 years, there's too much uncertainty. You can't predict. And in today's world, business world, you can't predict anything more than 5 years. So either 3 years or 5 years, and 4 years is, it's that uncomfortable space, which is neither here nor there. So I always recommend to clients that we take a 3-year time frame or a 5-year time frame, and then everything flows from there. And when we look at business growth metrics, some people tell me this looks like a balanced scorecard, but it isn't. It's a bit different, as you will see. But the principle is the same. Like the balanced scorecard tries to look at the business as a whole, as a holistic entity. The business growth metrics, or as we have an acronym for them, BGMs. The BGMs also take a 360-degree view of the business. And we look at 5 areas of the business in which we set metrics. The first is financial. And this is, of course, important. So we set financial for that 3-year or 5-year time frame. Where do I want the business to be after 3 years or 5 years? The second is customer. What kind of customer metrics do we want to achieve as a business at the end of 3 years or at the end of 5 years, whichever time frame we choose? And you can measure these customer outcomes in different ways: retention, customer retention, satisfaction, net promoter score, whatever you think is ideal, and wherever you are able to implement a system to measure them. It's important not just to set metrics, but to be able to measure them as well. The third area is employee-oriented outcomes. So at the end of 3 years, how do I want my employees to feel? We could look at satisfaction, we could look at attrition or retention. And the fourth is geographic reach. At the end of 3 years or 5 years, whichever time frame I've chosen, which geographies should my business be in? And you can see now why we looked at the purpose first, because all of these will flow from the purpose. To achieve that purpose, to kind of describe that purpose, we are really looking at what should the business look like at the end of that 3 or 5 year time frame. Can all of you hear me? Because the videos just disappeared. Okay, did the video just disappear? Were you all able to hear me? Okay, so the geographic reach, which markets do you want your business to be in? So you're really answering the question, if this is what my stated purpose is, what does it mean? What should the business look like at the end of 3 years or 5 years? And we look at it from a financial, customer, employee, geographic perspective. And the fifth is positioning. And positioning, this is not your marketing positioning. This is not your brand positioning, right? This has 4 components, only one of which is brand positioning. So the brand positioning is important. At the end of 3 or 5 years, what should my customers be thinking about me? How, what should they be saying about me? The second kind of positioning is employees and prospective employees. What should people who work with me, who want to work with my business in my company, what should they be thinking about my brand, my company? The third is your suppliers, your vendors. What should they be saying about my company at the end of 3 years or 5 years? And the fourth one is your strategic partners, your strategic alliances. If you have distributors and they become your partners, who will help you to grow? What should they be saying about you? And I know these are not technically metrics because they don't have numbers attached to them, but they serve as a kind of a compass. Everything you do in your business has to be aligned to achieving this kind of a positioning. So these are the 5 business growth metrics that you need to come up with. And if you come up with these business growth metrics, you have covered everything in your business. You've not left anything out. Usually what tends to happen is, unfortunately, many businesses focus on only the first one, financial, and they tend to neglect customer, employee, geographic, and positioning metrics. And if you don't plan for these, you're going to have a problem. So create a vision. And now you can see why I am including this as part of the vision. This is a vision. This is a vision for my business at the end of 3 years or at the end of 5 years. It's a limited time frame vision, but I have a purpose for it as well. Now, I may not achieve that purpose in 3 or 5 years, but I'm on my way to achieving that purpose. And the business growth metrics will be guided by that stated purpose. So this is why I look at vision as having 2 components, the stated purpose and the BGMs, or the business growth metrics. Once you've got this in place, you then create a year-by-year roadmap. So if I'm say a 3 crore company today and I want to be 50 crores in 3 years, I will say, okay, what am I going to achieve year by year from a financial, customer, employee, and geographic perspective? What are my metrics going to be in each of these areas? What am I going to do every year? And then I'll be talking about goal setting in just a moment, and we'll see how this translates into that. Now, once you've got your business growth metrics, then you need to look at 2 things. You need to look at your opportunities, and you need to identify your core competencies. So core competencies are very, very important, because this tells you how, what capabilities your business has currently or doesn't have. And very often when we start working with smaller businesses, including startups, what we tend to find is that there are no identifiable core competences in existence. It's surprising, but it's true. And then the important thing is to start building those core competencies. So what are the core competencies you require in order to achieve your BGMs? That is what you need to start focusing on as well. Because if you don't have those core competencies, then you're going to be stuck in a Me Too kind of a business, competing with people who are as good as you, and that doesn't get you anywhere. But if you have core competencies, then you can actually stand out, or you can stand out from the competition. So how do you define your core competencies? So you start by making a list of all the strengths you have as a business, all the strengths, and then you put it through a filter. It's a 4-stage filter, and all 4 of these conditions are required in order for a strength to be considered a core competence. If any one of these tests, any one of these conditions are not present, then that strength is not a core competence. So some people say my brand is a core competence, and very often we find that it's not, because it doesn't fulfill one of these conditions. So let's look at it. The first condition, and this is where most of the strengths go out of the window, it should not be easy for competitors to imitate. Not impossible, but not easy. So not easy means that if a competitor has to imitate to get that strength, they will have to invest a lot of money, or they will have to spend a lot of time. So they may be able to buy that core competence by hiring people, but that may be very, very expensive, or it may take a lot of time to build that strength. So that's the first one. And this will, if you have 100 strengths in your business today, it will knock them down to about 15, 20. That's really what happens, because a lot of these strengths would be something that competitors would have or could acquire quite easily. The second one, if a strength passes the first condition, you take it to the next condition, which is, can this strength be reused for multiple products and multiple markets? Not all your products and services, not all your markets, but multiple. It shouldn't just be one market or one product or service. If the strength fulfills both of these conditions, you go to the third one and say, does this strength contribute to customer benefits and value? Does it provide value for the product or service? And there's a very simple way to measure value. If you are really providing value to your customer will be willing to pay for that value. And very often they'll be willing to pay a premium for that value. Now you'll be left with a very small set of core competences. And then you take it to the fourth condition, which is, does this strength directly lead to performance that is superior to my competitors? And if there is any strength which fulfills all four conditions, that strength becomes a core competence. Now, typically what I tend to find is that most businesses will not have more than 2, maximum 3 core competences. Usually there are 1 or 2, but sometimes it can go up to 3 core competences. But even if you do this exercise, and please do this exercise, it's extremely critical for your business. If you do this exercise and you find that none of your strengths fulfill all 4 conditions, don't worry about it. That's when you analyze and you say, okay, for my business growth metrics and the opportunities that I've identified for future growth, what core competences do I need to build, which fulfill all these 4 conditions, which will help me to achieve my growth? So how do we implement this? I'm going to give you some examples. So of business growth metrics. So you can look at these and, and this will probably illustrate what I've been talking about. So these are real client examples. I've taken them from different clients and put them together. This is not one client, but look at this financial, and this is very interesting. This was a client when I started working with them. They were a 120 crore client, and they in 5 years they wanted to get to 750 crores with a net profit of 10%. These are examples of customer metrics, the customer business growth metrics. These are examples of employee business growth metrics. And then you have geographics. So this was a client who said, we want to be pan-India in 5 years time.
Yeah. Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, like our system got restarted, sir. So can you just hold for a minute or 2, sir?
Sure.
Sorry for the inconvenience, sir.
No problem.
Yeah. Correct.
So basically, what I was saying was that these are the 4 filters that you need to put, the 4 conditions. You make a list of all your strengths and then apply them one at a time, starting with the first one, because that's the major condition which will eliminate most of the strengths. And again, this is not a judgmental, this is not good or bad, it's just the way it happens. So all 4 of these conditions, if a strength has to be defined as a core competence, then you would need all 4 of these conditions to be fulfilled. If any one of these conditions is not fulfilled, then that strength cannot be a core competence. Now, what happens very often is, especially in the case of startups and smaller companies, is, and again, it's just a question of, this is what I've seen in experience. It's got nothing to do with abilities or competences. It's just the way it is. What tends to happen is that when we do this analysis, we may come up with no core competences, right? Usually we would like to look at 1 to 3 core competences, but sometimes there may be no core competences. So there's nothing to worry about over there if that happens. What you do need to do then is look at your stated purpose, look at your business growth metrics, and then try and identify what strengths should be core competences. What core competences do you need to build in the business to achieve those business growth metrics? So that's very, very important. So this exercise of identifying your core competences is extremely important for you if you want to be able to achieve growth for your business. So let me take you through some examples. So you can, these are real client examples, and I've put them, I've mixed and matched. I've taken them from different clients and put them together. So here is an example of the financial BGMs. And this is an interesting client. They were 120 crores when I started working with them, and they were looking at achieving 750 crores in 5 years. And then you have the customer metrics. These are the employee metrics. Then you have geographic. So this particular client wanted to be pan India, and in most of the major tier 1 to 3 cities, and they actually identify those cities. And then you can see this is a positioning. So positioning for customers, reliable, can solve any problem, highly innovative. For employees, 10 workplaces, the industry, for the suppliers, preferred customer for suppliers, and so on. So these are the examples. And just very quickly take it through real life examples of the opportunities. Now, this is a client this is the client I talked to you about earlier when I showed you the stated purpose. They were a reseller of IT hardware and solutions. And you can suddenly see when we define their stated purpose, how the opportunities suddenly started turning up. All of these opportunities were identified with them, which they weren't even looking at earlier, because for them, what were they? Their business was reselling. That was what it was. But the moment they said, the stated purpose was about helping businesses, solving business problems, helping businesses grow, we suddenly had a whole bunch of opportunities which came up, and this is where the growth started coming from. Here's another. This is actually a tech startup which we worked with, and these were all the opportunities that they identified after the stated purpose was defined. This is the example of the transformer manufacturer who I talked to you about earlier, where I gave you the example of their stated purpose. They were manufacturing transformers, customized transformers. But the moment we looked at their stated purpose as being, providing those innovative and efficient energy solutions, you can start seeing and these were all things which they listed. I didn't list this for them. They knew that these were opportunities there. They just weren't looking at them because the purpose was not there. Here's another one where you can see how they have prioritized the opportunities. So this particular client said, okay, if I don't modify my current factory, I don't modify the machines, these are the things I can start manufacturing. Zero investment, right? Using the same manufacturing setup with some small modifications, not a huge investment, I can start manufacturing all these things. And if I really put in an investment, then I can manufacture even better stuff. So obviously you can now start seeing a roadmap, right? The zero modifications are short term, the small modifications are mid-term, and the ones with the investment are long term. So in the first 2 or 3 years, there was actually an opportunity for this client to start generating revenue, which could be used to fund the investment for the future, because growth itself funds investment. The key, and why am I telling you this? Because a lot of you would have a funding problem. And the best way to get funding is internally. If you can identify where your growth can come from internally, and we've done this with more than 200 clients. So, of different sizes, including people who have zero revenue on day one when we start working with them. So this is it's not easy. I'm not going to pretend this is something that's very easy, but it's not impossible. If you start with the purpose, you identify the growth metrics, and then you start working on it. And this particular client I'm talking about was into commodities. They were manufacturing fabrics for fabrics that go into the lining of coats and jackets and shoulder pads, that kind of stuff. Commodity market, price driven market. And this is what, you can see how the opportunities started coming up when we started looking at the purpose to start with, and then the business growth metrics. And it's important to prioritize opportunities, which basically means, I've just given you an example. All your opportunities cannot be targeted at the same time. You need to have a list, in a ranking, and a time frame for each one to be worked on, and then create a roadmap to maximize these opportunities. And that is where the growth comes from. There are a lot of clients who, I'll give you another example, just off the top of my head. It's not there in the presentation, but it just came to my mind. One of the earliest clients I started working with, they were a 40 crore company, stagnating. Their business demand was stagnating for their products. They were supplying pneumatic, products, cylinders and pistons to the power sector. And when we started, we sat down and we did this whole exercise and started reworking it. They suddenly realized that there were other opportunities, other industries, like the ones I've just listed down. We did this exercise, which could give them growth. And this 40 crore company in 2.5 years grew to 250 crores. No jokes. This is what happened without additional investment, using the same factory, using the same machinery. Everything was the same, zero investment. And this growth from 40 to 250 crores is what enabled them to invest in a second factory for future growth. So there are a lot of opportunities for growing your business if you can channelize. Of course, to start the business, you need capital. There's no doubt about that. But there is a lot you can do if you sit down and look at your business to grow it without getting a lot of external funding in as well. I'm going to now move to goal setting. I was actually going to stop here initially and do this quick discussion, but in the interest of time, let's move to goal setting. Now, why am I going to talk about goal setting? Because very often I find, I mean, this is a joke, this is a cartoon, but unfortunately, I find this happening a lot in the business world. And this happens a lot with smaller businesses, unfortunately. It's a sad truth. And um, it's an easy way to see if it's happening in your business or not. Because if it's happening in your business, you have to be very cognizant of it. Just sit down and say, can I actually quantify what my goals are for the next 1 year? Just start with that and see how easy it is. Or ask, if you have a team, ask them, do you know what our goals are, business goals are for the next 12 months? If you have them, fantastic, that's great. But I'm going to show you a method today. And this is something which is at the heart of, we don't usually share this, but because I am on the board of IMCIP, I'm committed to the cause, and I'm sharing this with you because this is actually the tool that's at the heart of all the growth results our clients get. And just to give you an example, I'll give you two client examples. So you can see over here, this is a 7-month period between March and November 2018. You can see execution increased from 65% to 81% from this client. And accountability levels also increased significantly. And here's another client where you can see how execution increased from 70% to 91% in a year. So this is a tool which helps you to get things done. It helps to ensure that your plans, everything we talked about so far, business growth metrics, your planning, your roadmap, if it doesn't actually happen, it's of absolutely no use. You could have the best strategy in place, the best ideas. If they don't get executed, nothing happens. And this is called the 5-step execution model. So now I'm going to compress this into about 15 minutes, but this is again an exercise which takes about 1 day when we do it with clients. So I will urge you to understand the concepts behind it. I will show you some examples, and you can go back and run this in your business. So the 5-step execution model basically says that there are 5 things that are absolutely essential if you want your execution to be at 90% plus levels. 100% is never possible because plans always change, right? If you do 100% execution, there's something wrong with the plan. It's either not challenging enough, or there's something wrong with it. But because every plan, when it hits the road, there are changes that happen. But you can do 90% plus execution. And interestingly, just to give you a benchmark, Harvard Business School did a study a few years ago of businesses globally, all sizes, and it found that the average execution of business plans and strategies is less than 40%. That's right, less than 40%. And among smaller companies, it's even less. But with this tool, you can actually go to as much as 90 to 95%. I just give you an example of a client who went to 91% within a year's time from 70% execution. So clarity, alignment, ownership, recording and review. These are the 5 steps. All 5 of these must be there right from the planning stage through the execution stage. And I'll explain what each of these means. So let's first start with clarity. So this is an advertisement that was put out by a British explorer called Ernest Shackleton in 1905. He went to the South Pole in 1907, and he advertised for crew for his ship in 1905. And I read this out to you because the print is small. It says, "Men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success." Now, there are only 2 ways you can react to an advertisement of this nature. Either you say, forget it, no way, right? I don't want any part of this. Or you're going to be one of those guys who's going to say, man, this is what I've been looking for all my life. I'm in. You are not going to have any people responding to this kind of an ad saying, okay, let's go there and see what happens. Right? That's not going to happen. And this is what I mean when I say clarity. This clarity is one of the most important things. And unfortunately, I'm going to make the statement and I'm going to back this up with what my experience has been. But unfortunately, almost every business plan I've come across, almost every goal setting exercise I've come across tends not to be clear. I get challenged very often when I'm working with clients and I talk to them about clarity, and they'd say, no, we are absolutely clear in our goals. Everyone knows what we are supposed to do. And then I say, okay, let's go through this whole process and do it. And what's surprising is that 100% of the cases where I've been challenged and people say our business plans are clear, our goal setting is very clear, they struggle with this process. And that's when I tell them, look, if it was clear, you wouldn't be struggling. And this is extremely important because if you want execution to happen, remember the gap between your vision and reality. If you want your vision to be executed, if you want those business growth metrics, the BGMs to be achieved, you have to have clarity, because the people who are executing are not generating the same vision. They have to understand, interpret, and execute. And if they don't understand or interpret incorrectly, you will not get execution. Now, for a very long time, I was a fan of SMART goals. We've all heard of SMART, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, etc. And I use this a lot as a professional manager until I realized that, SMART tells you what a goal should be. It should be specific, it should be measurable, it should be achievable, etc. But how do you make it specific? How do you make it measurable? It doesn't say that, right? Does it tell you that? No, it doesn't. And for a long time, I was struggling with this. How do I make my goals specific enough that people can understand it without my having to explain it to them? If I have to spend 1 minute explaining my goal to someone, it is not clear, right? If I have to spend 1 minute explaining anything to anyone, it is not clear. Clarity comes like the stated purpose. You put 10 words and people know exactly what you mean. And that's when I developed one of our proprietary tools, which is called the 7-step goal setting process. And again, I'm giving it to you. Please feel free to use it in your business. The 7 steps starts from defining, and some of these are covered when we do our goal setting now, but you'll find there will be gaps. If you go back, look at your goals, I will guarantee you will find gaps. You will not be following all the 7 steps. And I'm saying this because I've done this as a professional manager. When I used to make my business goals, I never followed all 7 steps. I learned through hard experience and failures that some of the things were important, which were getting left out. So define what has to be accomplished, how it will be accomplished. So what are the actions that need to be taken to accomplish the goal? Why does it need to be accomplished? Why are you doing it in the first place? And very often we don't define that. Sometimes, and I've seen this happen when we sit down and work on business goals with clients, and we ask, why are you doing this? That goal very often gets discarded because it sounds good, but it doesn't really achieve much. Who will execute? Accountability and ownership. What are the dependencies? Very often we don't identify the dependencies right from the planning stage. We start identifying them when execution starts. When does it need to be completed? Clear deadlines, and how will we monitor it? A review process that's put in place in the beginning. If you follow these 7 steps rigorously, you will get clarity in your goal setting. You will get that specificity, the measurability in your goal setting that you need. So I'm offering you this as a replacement of SMART. It works. It's worked for the last, I don't know, it's worked for maybe the last 20 years for me personally. It's worked for the last 11 years with more than 200 clients. There's no reason why it will not work for you if you adopt it rigorously. And there has to be clarity at every step. What is to be accomplished has to be very clear. How, why, who, dependencies have to be identified, deadline set, and the review system. And I'll talk about reviews also in a minute. Alignment is of 2 types. One is conceptual alignment. So if I come to you and say, hey, I need you to do this for me, will you do it? And you say, yeah, I'll do it. That's conceptual alignment. You understand what I need and you agree. But one of the things, the second part of alignment is something that we usually miss, which is called time alignment. Time alignment is if I give you a commitment that I'm going to do something, I'm going to carry out an action, I'm going to do a task. Have I actually blocked time for it? Do I have a plan for it? And very often you are dependent on me to fulfill my commitment to do an action, but I haven't planned for it. I fail and you fail as a result. This happens very often, right? You go to someone and they say, yes, I'll do it. Don't worry about it. And you go back to them and say, hey, what happened? And they say, oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot. Oh, it slipped my mind. Oh, give me 2 more days, right? How often does this happen? Very often. So time alignment is also very important. And alignment, the concept of alignment in the 5-step model means that when you need something to be done, not only should you have conceptual alignment, that the other person knows what needs to be done and makes a commitment, but you should also know what their plan is. Have they blocked time for it? And of course, we have a review process, which I'll talk about, but that time alignment is extremely important. The third step is ownership. And ownership is very interesting because people do not take ownership. Very often people come and tell me, in my business, people don't take ownership. And that's because you have to give ownership. You cannot expect people to take ownership. Why do I say that? Because in my perspective and the 5-step model, ownership has 2 parts, 2 components. The first is responsibility. And if you look at the definition of responsibility in the dictionary, you will find words like having control over someone, being accountable or to blame for something, a moral obligation. And these are all negative. So when when somebody has to take a responsibility, they kind of feel like this. Okay, my head is going to be on the block. And the 2 parts of ownership are basically responsibility and empowerment. And responsibility needs to be defined in a certain way. So here's another model for you. Whenever you are giving someone responsibility, this is the way to define it. Make sure these 6 things are there. First of all, the scope of the responsibility. Why is that person doing that? Meaning of the responsibility. What is that person supposed to do? What is that responsibility you're giving that person for? So why, what, measurement of that responsibility. How do you know that the responsibility has been discharged? Documenting that responsibility so that there's clarity on both sides of what has been agreed to. Putting in a review process in place, saying that, okay, this is how we're going to review and evaluate progress and completion. And finally, get commitment from that person. You can't assume that someone is going to deliver on a responsibility. And getting commitment means ensuring that all the previous steps have been followed. The person should understand what they're doing and why they're doing it also. Very often we miss out the why. We may ask someone to do something and the person goes and does it, but they don't know why they're doing it. And if you don't know why you're doing it, you may end up doing the wrong thing. And that happens so often. If you go to the root of it and see why, when commitments don't get met, it's usually because people don't understand why they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And the second part, like I showed you, was empowerment. And what this really means is, if you look at authority versus responsibility, it is only when there's high responsibility and high authority that people are engaged, team members are engaged. And that's why you have to give ownership. You have to give responsibility. You have to provide empowerment to people to discharge their responsibility. The fourth step is recording, which has two parts to it. The first part is ensuring that you document everything that is discussed and agreed, and then you share that documentation with all the stakeholders. It's as simple as that. And very often this is not done. Every verbal discussion and agreement must be documented. If only, it doesn't have to be lengthy minutes. It can just be a simple email saying, hey, we met, we discussed this. Just wanted to make sure we are both on the same page. That's it. It's good enough. But it's very, very important. And the fifth step is reviewing. And I'm going to offer you a review process which we implement with all clients. It's a 4-step review process. And I'll show you some examples also very quickly. But the first thing is a daily review, which usually takes 5 to 7 minutes. That's it. And really what we do in this case is the entrepreneur, the business owner gets the team together and says, okay, each one of us are just going to share 3 things. What did we achieve yesterday? So it's not a to-do list. This is everything I did yesterday. No, we don't want to know what you did yesterday. We just want to know the 1, 2, 3, 4 achievements from yesterday. And there won't be more than 2 or 3. It's really priorities getting achieved, important things. Were there any issues or problems? I call this the AIP review. A for achievement, I for issues, P for priorities. You're basically looking at achievements of yesterday, any issues which came up for which you need help in resolving, and finally, what are your priorities for today? That's it. It's a 5 to 7 minute meeting in the morning where everyone just gets together and shares this. Everyone then gets to know what's happening in the business, where are the problem areas, what is being achieved, and what people are prioritizing. And it's extremely, extremely useful. It's now become a habit for every client where we've implemented this. And then you do a weekly review around the same, on the same lines: achievement, issues, and priorities. Achievements for the last week, any problems encountered which are unresolved in the last week, and are there any specific problems coming up in the next? What are the priorities for the next week? And were there any specific? Are there any specific problems in the business that need to be resolved? A monthly review, again on the same lines: last month's achievements, next month's priorities, any major issues. Again, it's a highlight. And then spend time on discussing problems, challenges, and improvements for the business. What I also recommend is every month doing a growth review of the goals that I set. And I'll just talk about the goals in a minute, but since we're talking about reviews, you review the goals set for achieving the business growth metrics. And then finally, a quarterly review is a strategy review where you just look at what are the achievements of the business in the last quarter? What is the business environment like? What does the next quarter look like? What does the remainder of the year look like? Are there any changes to strategy that you need to bring about? And this is really the 5-step execution model. All 5 steps put together will ensure that your goal setting is done properly, your goals are executable, and your execution happens the way it should. So when it comes to implementation, how do you set goals? This is really the way to do it. Look at your goal. For each goal, you identify certain key milestones. And then for each milestone, you identify the actions to be taken to achieve that milestone. If you do it in this manner, you will be following the 7-step goal setting process that I just discussed a little while ago. The 7 steps starting from what is to be achieved, why it is to be achieved, how it is to be achieved, and when it is to be achieved, and so on. All those 7 steps. So goals, milestones, and actions. And the advantage of this system is if you do this, when you're reviewing it, you only review the actions. You don't need to review, you don't even need to even look at the goal or the milestones, because as all the actions get completed, the milestones get completed. As all the milestones get achieved, the goal also gets achieved. So this is the simplest way, and this is how we do it, practically speaking. Once you've defined your business growth metrics, you need to identify your key priority areas. So you take your BGMs for this financial year, for example. Look at what your key priorities areas are for each BGN: financial, customer, employee, geographic. Look at the kind of resources you require, because you need to plan. If you've identified core competencies that need to be built, you have to plan to build them as well. What are the financial resources you need uh, to achieve the growth metrics? And then you institute a system of review for these plans. So I'm giving you examples now. So for every client where we institute this review system, I talk to you about daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly. We have a WhatsApp group, and this is what it looks like. You can just see the AIPs: achievement, issues, priorities, and they give them different names. Some people like to call them stuck. Some people like to call them hurdles. This client actually looked at AIP. This was actually a tech startup that we worked with. You can see it's very simple, very quick, and that's why I said it's a 5 to 7 minute review in the morning. Even smaller clients where you can see they type stuff in Hindi, they write it down, take photographs, but this becomes a religion. It becomes sacred. Every morning, everyone is reporting in on what they're doing, what they're not being able to do, where they need help, and what their priorities are. And then in the weekly review, again, we follow a format like this, where we look at achievements, issues, we look at priorities, we look at KPIs getting achieved, and we also look at growth related priorities from the growth plans. And like I said, there's recording and sharing that needs to be done, which is done through the minutes of the meeting on a weekly basis. So I'm going to stop here now and open it up for Q&A. I know we've lost a little bit of time, but and I know I've gone through a lot of this quite fast. There's a lot of information over here, but I hope you've been taking notes. And what I can tell you is that if you want to achieve the kind of results in your business that I've seen other clients achieve, the clients that we work with achieve. These methodologies will really, really help you if you diligently apply them. And like I said, your takeaways are totally up to you. We take no credit for what our clients achieve, and it's what they do with our methodologies. They actually implement all of this, and they get the results that they need. So I'm going to stop there, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Gaurav, how do you want to run the Q&A session?
Christopher, this is Aditya.
Yes, Ratan.
Yeah, Christopher, the kind of setup, at least I have, we are a 50-member team, right? So initially, when we started off the startup, a couple of us were doing everything, as you rightly said. We are the CEOs, we are the CHROs, we are the CTOs, and many more functions put together. Right? But a business group plan, so to say, where you're basically making a goal statement, you're making a KPIs, and you're making your KRS, and you're making KPIs, and then finally you're linking it to the vision or the goal that you have, financial goal. The question is, how do you plan it out in such a small team? Point number one. Point number two is that how would you identify that who's going to be the right person for the right job? Because there could be a possibility you could have a stereotype that every one of us know everything out here. Maybe you need to look at it to create a new HR function, maybe, or a technology team. So typically in a small team, it becomes very difficult to put everything under one governance. So my question is that, is there a different lens that we need to put on? That's question number one. Question number two is that, what is the optimum number of headcount you require to make a robust plan like this?
So I'll answer the second part of the question first. We've worked on plannings like this with just one person, the entrepreneur. So that's the optimal level. You can do it with one person. We worked with teams which have been extremely small as well. As you got 50 people. We worked with teams where, like I said, one person, just the entrepreneur. But we worked with teams where they're just 10 people or 12 people. We've also worked with much larger organizations, but those are not relevant to your question. So it's actually easier to implement this in a smaller organization because the complexity of levels and hierarchies is not there. The larger the organization is, the more complex this implementation gets, because then you have to start at the top. So if you have say 100 employees, you'll typically have 4 or 5 heads of departments to start with. Maybe even in a 50 setup team, you may have a couple of heads of department to start with. I don't know how your organization is structured, so I'm just being very generic over here. But typically, the larger you get, you can only focus on the top 5 to 10 people in the company to create a plan like this. So typically, that's really the optimal size. Maybe 50 to 20 people is what you should be working with at any point in time, and then cascading it down the organization based on the hierarchy of the company. The smaller the team, the easier it is to actually implement something like this. So that's the second part of your question in terms of optimal size. The first part of your question in terms of how do you decide who takes ownership? Well, it should be competence based. If someone has a skill set that can be used, it doesn't matter if that's a primary skill set or secondary skill set. When you're looking at a startup, everyone has to chip in. You can't have too much specialization in small teams. So typically, and that's why, like both of us agree that when you're just starting off and there are a couple of people, you do everything. There's no specialization at all at that point in time. So you will have a lot of multitasking that happens in small teams. And as you grow, you start specializing, and creating those departments and functions which focus only on a certain set of responsibilities. So you have to allocate by competence, and only if you don't have anyone who has a certain set of skills. So if you don't have anyone who has any HR skills at all, then you would need to allocate by bandwidth and say, okay, who has the time to take this on and learn on the job? Because sometimes that also happens. People, if you don't have skills, you can't say, okay, I'm going to recruit an additional headcount. Getting an FTEs is expensive. So you have to make do with what you have. And that's why my recommendation is always look at competence first while allocating responsibility. If someone has a particular competence which is suitable for a job, get them to multitask. If no one has the skill set required for that job, then allocate by bandwidth. Whoever has the bandwidth to be able to do that job should be doing it, and then building and developing their skill set on the job. That's how we do it with in reality with clients as well.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. I'm Vishal, sir. I'm representing a drone-based company. Sir, you have mentioned about ownership. So we have been facing a problem of retaining, you can say, team members. Like, yes, they are committed and they have been working hard with us from last 2-3 years. But yes, since the drone industry is growing and many companies have been investing, and some of them have even started, giants like Reliance, Adani have also started coming up. So the team members are being offered like a good, healthy package. Now it becomes tough for us to retain those, you can say, team members on whom we have invested. And we have made them capable of, you can say, working, and of course, they too have contributed to the company's growth. Now, can you kindly tell me, sir, like when you talk about ownership, means what kind of ownership should we, you can say, give them so that we can retain it? Either it is in form of stakes or like, because they can align with the vision and all. Of course, vision, mission, everything is good. But when it comes to ground reality, how do we, you can say, retain them, sir? And what kind of ownership should we give?
Okay, so the ownership I was talking about in the 5-step model, the third step of the 5-step model, I really wasn't talking to them about physical ownership of the company, of the business. I was talking more about giving responsibility and authority, empowerment, and so that they own the tasks that they need to do, they own their responsibilities that they need to perform. So that's what was the ownership I was talking about. But I just wanted to clarify that. But to address your question specifically, I guess I'll give you the bad news first. The bad news is that this is a problem which is going to stay, right? In most organizations, this attrition is a real problem. And the good news, or well, I wouldn't call it the good news, the silver lining or the consolation actually is the right word. The consolation, if it's any consolation for you, is that this is not just a problem that's faced by smaller companies. It's a problem that's faced by larger companies as well. In companies where, when I joined IBM, I was running a business where our attrition was more than 100% annually. That's right, more than 100%. We were losing a lot of people at the lower levels. The senior team, my management team was with me, but there was a lot of churn at the lower levels, and we had to stifle. We brought it down to about 40% within about 10 months. But I'm just giving an example that even a brand name like IBM, which pays pretty well, has very, very good perks, and there's still attrition that happens over there. So I think the reality that we are all living with today is that this is something that we will have to live with, that people are going to leave. Now, how do we make people stay? How do we retain people? You need to use a mix of things. And I don't want to give you a formula because there is no formula. For each business, it would be different. But yes, for key people, physical ownership in the form of stock options, or that is definitely one way to go about it. But before that, and that's why I'd start with purpose. The whole idea of having a purpose and having people sharing in the vision is, if someone truly believes in your vision and shares your vision, and they become a part owner of the company because you assign them, you allot them certain number of shares. If they actually understand and share your vision, they are less likely to leave. If they have pride in the company that they're working for, they're less likely to leave. If they are, if they feel that they're doing something with their lives that is meaningful, they are less likely to leave. And this is one of the things I've also noticed with a lot of the younger people today, and it's a very interesting field. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it's just an observation. The younger generation is one generation which is extremely difficult to retain, right? They change jobs a lot. But I've also found that the younger generation are very passionate about what they want to do in life. There are lots of young people out there who are looking for meaning in their life, and there maybe some of them are among you as well, who started a business because you were looking at something meaningful to do with your life. And one of the keys to a lot of a lot of the stuff that we do with clients is counterintuitive, by the way. It's not something that it's very easy to accept or believe in, but it works. One of the key things to retain people is to do the right kind of recruitment. It starts from there. If you recruit people, the right kind of people, they're likely to stay with you longer, because if you recruit people who are passionate about what you're doing, who share in your vision, genuinely share in your vision. If you recruit people who feel that when they join your organization, they're doing something meaningful with their lives and it gives them satisfaction, they will stay with you longer. They will definitely stay with you longer. And again, this is not something that I'm saying, that is theoretical. It's based on not only research across the world, but also what I've seen and experienced in terms of retaining people. So there are two parts to this, just to summarize. One part is that the reality is you will have to live with churn and attrition. It's going to keep happening. You can do certain things about it, like stock options and looking at ownership of the company being shared. But if you do your recruitment right, and very often this is one place where many entrepreneurs tend to rush things. And I'm not saying it's justified, because you have a position to fill, you don't have too many people, you've got a small team, there's so much work to be done, you need to hire another head, and then you say, can I last for 6 months without this position being filled? I can't. So let me hire the first person I get, or the second person I get. right? So very often we rush into that hiring. And I know why. I know the problem. I know it's very difficult to keep. I faced it myself. I run a small business myself, but it's it's the worst possible thing to do, because you're more likely then to recruit the wrong person, and that person will leave soon. So if you can fix your hiring and your recruitment in such a way that you hire the right kind of people, you will definitely find a difference in the retention levels.
Christopher.
Yes, Subhash.
Thanks, Christopher. I think we have our next speaker also lined up after 20 minutes or so, but I'm sure there are more questions. So, Christopher, what I'm suggesting that let us take all the questions, note it down, and we'll share with you offline. And maybe
Sure.
once the call is on, we may have another short session, just focus on those specific aspects which our participants have queries.
Sure.
Maybe later on.
Sure.
The 3 months program, sometimes based on your convenience. Is it okay if we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I was actually going to say that we need to wrap up, because I've got a client meeting now in another 15 minutes.
I think from 2:30 you have another meeting coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Christopher, I think obviously, it's a great session, but it's more important for us. The reason being, whatever you mentioned, like the purpose, the goals, the activities, the milestones, all those concepts that you have mentioned, your own way, some of the proprietary. First of all, thanks so much for sharing the proprietary tools. I know that not many consultants would do that, but that's a gift for IMCIP. So thank you for that. Christopher, but all those concepts that you have shared, I think this is the exact starting point we are looking for, because this every startup is going to experience these 3 months of mentorship, but everything starts with a goal, right? That what I want to achieve after 3 months, what milestones I'm going to set for myself, in 3 months time I want to achieve, right? So I think now the tools that you have shared, the techniques that you have mentioned would help our entrepreneurs to set up the right kind of goals and milestones which they would like to achieve in the short term.
Great.
Yeah,
I'm glad to.
Yeah. So with that, Christopher, I think we would like to end the session for today. Again, from on behalf of all the entrepreneurs, definitely we all heard about goal, purpose, and everything, but I think it's a new way of looking at it, and a new way of structuring the entire thought process. That's what is I am personally taking away a few things from there, from whatever we have shared. Thank you so much, Christopher. Thank you. Bye bye. And
Thank you, and all the best to all the participants.